Hi, and welcome to today's discussion. What I will be talking about is what is the waterfall methodology and covering that briefly. Firstly, we'll give you a bit of a definition and a bit of history behind it, go into the stages of waterfall methodology, and what really goes into it. But I'm going to cover it very briefly because there's a lot of information there. So very high level advantages and disadvantages, and then an overall recap. So let's crack on. What is the definition of the waterfall methodology? Now, the definition, and I'm going to read this, is also known as the waterfall model. It's a sequential development process that flows like a waterfall through all phases of project. Areas such as analysis, design, development, testing, for example, with each phase completely wrapping up before the next phase begins. And that's the key one. Remember, each phase completely wrapping up before the next phase begins. Now, a little bit of history behind this of where waterfall methodology was came from. Now, it's originally for software development approach, and it follows a sequential linear process. It originated in the 1970s, and one of the earliest models of software developed, and I think it was Dr. Winston W. Royce in 1970 who did a paper titled "Managing Development of Large-Scale Software Systems," and it's in its time it was one of the best and largely adopted by most people, most of the businesses within the software industry. So let me cover some of the stages of what waterfall methodology is. Now, there is the first stage is requirements gathering. What we're going to deliver, how we're going to do it. Then it's the design. Get the engineers or whoever it may be to design the element, and then it goes into implementation. Once you've done the implementation, now bear in mind there's no real testing during implementation, and then it moves into verification, i.e., stroke testing, to confirm does it work, what's done, and then it goes into a maintenance window. Now, you could repeat this cycle, but without doing this complete cycle, you don't move on to the next stage. So again, the stages of waterfall methodology are requirements gathering, design, implementation, verification, and maintenance. Okay, and verification is also stroke testing. Some advantages: it gives you a clear structure and a defined stages, so it's really easy to manage and understand. And it's well suited for projects which have a clearly defined requirements. Now, if you are a experienced PM, or you've had a lot of exposure, you will probably know that nothing is really clearly defined. So that's a pretty much ambiguous statement that it sits within waterfall methodology, but I would say it's clearly defined stages rather than to clearly defined project. It's easier to measure progress and identify issues. So it's because it's doing it in small chunks or small stages, shall we say. It's easy to manage, and you can see where you are, what you're doing. Next one is disadvantages. Now, with every methodology, there are disadvantages. With this one is one of the ones I think it's quite not. It's not flexible. It just limits on how flexible you can be within the methodology, and it's not well suited for projects that have loads of change requirements. And in reality, in most projects, there's always a change requirement, or the business decides to have a different strategy, etc. And another disadvantage is it's got very limited stakeholder involvement. So if your hierarchy decides to change its mind, etc., it's it does cause a few issues. And having stakeholders involved, in my opinion, is really, really key. So in summary, what the waterfall methodology, in my opinion, has its place within the software industry. It's got a lot of history behind it. It's got a lot of companies that have used it. Has its place in many organizations. However, with the way we are moving today, we've got to be agile. We've got to be more flexible in our approach. We've got to be more responsive to the markets. We've got to be responsive to the customer needs. So it has its place, but I think it has to be amalgamated with other projects. And like I said, it's got plenty of advantages, also limited, and got some disadvantages, but it does have a role to play for that topic, and you know, and you would like, if you like any more details, please get in touch. Thank you.